for those who don't know me, and these are majority of the people here, I guess, I'm a third-year PhD student in the philosophy department, and I'm working on human-machine interaction and aesthetics. I'm really keen on to find out what are going to be the changes in the field of aesthetics based on technology and advanced technological devices. So what I'm going to do is first to introduce you to some of the main concepts that I'm working with. Then we will talk a bit about what could be the potential impact of transformative technology on our aesthetic perception, what is actually aesthetic perception, how it's related with our everyday life. And then we're going to look at two cases, which I find really interesting. One is very popular sex robot case, highly discussed. And the second one is the case of the robot priest, particular robot priest Pepper, performing a funeral. So, what is transformative technology? That's basically a relatively new concept, and as most of the things in philosophy is highly discussable, a bit loose in meaning, but overall, by transformative technology, we are supposed to understand every advanced technological device which is designed to increase humans' intellectual or physical capacity. As you can see on the picture, this can be even your smartphone. More advanced would be prosthetic limbs, artificial eyes, artificial skin, any sort of assisting robots, sex robots, as it provides sort of new experience, but we'll talk about this later. Any advanced computer and so on. Now, more specific, what is aesthetics? So probably when you hear about aesthetics, you immediately think of something like art, going to a concert, enjoying a theater play, ballet, and any other art-related event that sort of brings you pleasure or displeasure. And that's basically true. This is called art-centered concept. However, this is, for now, it's still dominant in the field of aesthetics, but we've got another interpretation of aesthetics, which I prefer more. And for me, I personally find it more accurate when we speak about, especially in the case with human-machine interaction and overall the field of aesthetics, and that is everyday aesthetic concept. So everyday aesthetic concept sort of narrows down aesthetic knowledge to its original idea, and this is how we perceive the form. And everyday aesthetics pleads for the fact that in our everyday activities, we also have aesthetic experiences, we do aesthetic judgments, and if you think for ordinary activities such as choosing what clothes to wear, casually just listening to music while doing something else, or just observing the environment around you, thinking of how you arrange your home, how you synchronize all the objects around you. So these are all experiences that are explained by everyday aesthetics. This is the aesthetic layer of our everyday life. And it absolutely can coexist with any other layers, such as we do moral judgments, we participate in a society, we're part of we're part of particular culture, and etc. So everyday aesthetics is the concept that I use in my research and I adopt for this presentation as well. Now, how we form aesthetic perception. We've got here sort of, let's say, two main type of components. We've got so-called common in terms of that we can share and communicate it, and that's social cultural aspect of the aesthetic perception. This is pretty much related with how we were educated, what we know about art, what we've been taught at school, what kind of culture we represent, what trends do we follow, and so on and so on. This is how basically we build up and we present aesthetic stereotypes. We know, for example, that certain proportions of the body are supposed to be more attractive than others simply because we were taught this way. We know that this is the correct proportion of the human body and these are not that perfect proportions. There are plenty of studies on these topics, and we know that people, for example, whose faces correspond to the aesthetic stereotypes, for example, are much more likely to perform well at the job interview, are socially acceptable, more pleasant, and so on and so on. Another layer or another components are the subjective. I'm not gonna concentrate on these in my talk now, though these are my favorites from the research, my favorite part. These are subjective and they're strictly personal because they depend on our spatio-temporal sense, feelings of balance, harmony, and proportion. The idea is that we all have them, but they're represented in us in a different way. And that's pretty much also depends on the proportions of our own body and how we see distances, how we see objects related to one another. And this is pretty much how we estimate forms and pretty much how we understand, how we know that certain shape is more pleasant to us than others. This is pretty much related with how we feel the environment. Okay, so another way we form our perception is through different ways of interaction with the environment. So this is also observation, which is the traditional way, what art-centered theory would tell us. We observe objects, we observe art, or we listen to art. Pretty much we're in a sort of a passive position, and we make our conclusions whether yes or not it corresponds with our personal taste. When it comes to technology, however, we've got two more ways to interact in the environment, with the environment. So one is for interaction in terms of when we think of all this artificial body parts, artificial skin, artificial eyes, or even the advanced devices who sort of respond to you when you interact with them. This is all for interaction, and this is completely different connection in the human machine. It's not passive, as we would think from the observation, but it is interaction where both participants mutually correspond to each other and encourage, let's say, the device encourages us to, it boosts our imagination, us to think about new ideas, think of the environment in a completely new way. The other is as part of the environment, as I put it. This is as in the case of the robot produced Pepper, when it drastically changed the environment around us. That could be also, for example, virtual environments can be as part of the environment. When we see that it is very often has nothing to do with the natural, And this is completely new arrangement of the objects around us, which cannot exist in a natural way. So, in this regard, what can be the impact of transformative technology on our aesthetic perception? So, one of the key moments, as I said for the previous slide, is that our aesthetic perception and our aesthetic stereotypes, the way we interact aesthetically with the environment, were more or less formed and sort of repetitive much before we had these advanced devices around us. So no matter how much aesthetic stereotypes change and they follow trends and they're product of different cultures, different era, it's still, we work with what we have naturally around us. The moment we have advanced technology involved, that can lead us to completely new experience, brings us new emotions, and make us think the environment in a different way. So it can have, it can reshape our cognitive and emotional processes. For example, think of our eyes, which can also see in the dark, which originally human beings can't do. This pretty much will change our idea about this environment, how we feel in this environment. Or we can see colors for example, colors that we don't have names for because we just were not capable to see them. So it will certainly create new context and aesthetic norms, as it's the case with the robot performing a funeral. And of course, naturally, we will look probably for new verbal expressions, since we won't probably have, we either have to change the meanings of the words that we're already using in order to describe this human-machine aesthetic experience, or we need to think of new vocabulary which will grasp all the moments and all the experiences that will come after this interaction. Let's look at the case with the sex robots. That's very discussed case. It's plenty of articles were written in terms of its ethical side. Is it moral really to have such substitution of mainly women from the feminist side? The thing is, however, that I'm gonna argue about this if it's morally acceptable or not. The thing is that they show that number one, we already treat those objects as real humans. For example, a research made just 3 years ago here in Europe, and it was had to explore whether people who attend brothels with sex robots think that it's cheating. And we all know that cheating is something that you can do from as minimum one human being to another. You can't really imagine cheating with a machine. However, most of the participants answered that they see it as cheating simply because they feel, or they in their head, these are real women, although they know they're not. What technology allows us, however, is that we can design, in this case, women, but let's more generally say robots, which have non-natural features, which have completely different texture, simply because the material is not natural, and therefore they will lead us to completely different experience, even when it comes to having sex with them. So in a way that would require new verbal expression, new description, and so on. Another is the robot priest, which I really like. The robot priest basically grasped my attention from the very beginning, as we all know that the role of a priest is something really human. We can't, as in any religion, I think, it is the priest who is the connection between you and the sort of divine entity. And the reason he or she is there, it is because it is a human being. However, here, the robot priest conducting a funeral ceremony a few years ago, when I looked at the case, it was still just for, it was still a trial. Now in Asian countries, it is pretty popular to have such a robot. And it's, we know that since we use such robots, number one, it starts changing the whole concept of religion. And number two, the whole arrangement of the ceremony, or what we know a funeral ceremony looks like, what we're supposed to hear, and the particular emotions that we're supposed to feel while attending a funeral ceremony changed, which again should make us think that we really need to look at these cases and this problem in general, and to explore it further. Imagine how it will reshape the whole environment that we live in overall. Thank you.